Kinich is a Dendro main DPS that can be used in various teams. In this video, I'll review his kit, what weapons to use, what relics to use, what talents to prioritize, what teams to build, and a showcase at the end. Starting off with this kit, his skill lets him attach himself to another opponent, and then he enters the Naito Blessings mode. During this state, he generates 2 Naito points per second and can loop around the enemy towards either the right or the left and fires small bits of damage when normal attacking that are considered skill damage that generate 3 Naito points. While looping around the enemy, a blind spot will appear on either the left or right side of the enemy. When passing through this blind spot, Kinich will generate 4 extra Naito points. Once Kinich has generated 10 Naito points, his skill will be converted into Skill Spiker Cannon, which lets him shoot a blast of an insane amount of damage in exchange for his remaining Naito points. For his ultimate, he summons A-Jaw to deal a decent amount of Dendro damage at certain intervals, and if you're in the Naito state, using his ultimate doesn't remove time from your state. Next up, his passives. The passive Price of Desolation lets him get 7 Naito points if the enemy is affected by burning or burgeon every 0.8 seconds. The next passive, Flame Spirit Pact, gives him 1 stack of Hunter's experience after a party member triggers a Naito burst. And for the record, even though Pyro Traveler does use Phlogiston and generates like Naito points, his ultimate does not count as a Naito burst, so triggering his ultimate will not trigger this part of his passive. But if you do use 2 other characters' Naito bursts like Ayansan or Auroron or Cylonen, you can get a maximum of 2 stacks, and when you use his Skill Spiker Cannon, he consumes all the stacks he has and increases his damage dealt by 320%. For his talents, you're going to want to prioritize leveling up his skill, since that's where the majority of his damage comes from, and then you can level up his ultimate since it does do a decent amount of damage. For his weapons, obviously his signature Fang of the Mountain King is going to be his best in slot. It increases his elemental skill and burst damage, but a good 5-star alternative would be Beacon of the Reed Sea because it provides him with a good amount of survivability and offense. Another good alternative that isn't a 5-star weapon, that's a lot more free to play, would be the 4-star weapon, event weapon by the way, Earth Shaker, because it increases his elemental skill damage, which again, that's where most of his damage comes from, so that's pretty good. And then another good 4-star alternative would be the Battle Pass weapon, Serpent Spine, because it offers him a good amount of crit rate, about 27%, and it increases his damage load by 30%, up to 5 stacks. Every 4 seconds he's on the field, which he is going to be in because he's a main DPS, right? He's a driver, and because his skill attaches himself onto the enemy, you kind of have to continuously stay on the field for him to be viable. Like, there's no dual DPS, main DPS, sub DPS alternative playstyles. Once you use his skill, he is locked onto the enemy, so you're gonna have to stay in the field. For his artifacts, Obsidian Codex is his best in slot, but a really good alternative would be the Unfinished Reverie because his kit already incentivizes him to do the burning and burgeon reaction, which this set does as well, right? It gives you 50% damage dealt when Kinich leaves combat for 3 seconds, and then it slowly diminishes unless there's a burning or burgeon reaction, in which case your damage bonus will stay up constantly. For his teams, let's start off with his best team, which is Kinich, and then a pyro character to again trigger the burning reaction. Another character that can use the Deepwood memory sets that reduces Dendro Shred, and then you can have another support, a flex slot that either increases attack or shreds more Dendro, or a sub DPS, something along those lines. As of right now, his best team is a bit complicated. It's gonna be Kinich, Mavuika, because she's a Natlink character. She provides on-field pyro application, and she also acts as a dual DPS, right? As a nuke DPS, in where you can just use her ultimate and then quickly switch off of her. And then after that, it's gonna be Escoffier with the Deepwood memory set, because again, she also has a skill that continuously does damage and applies cryo, which is going to be really good for when Mavuika does her nuke DPS ultimate. She can melt that and do double damage and then just quickly get out, apply more pyro, and then you can switch back to Kinich and continue the rotation. And then after that, it's gonna be Ayansan, because like Mavuika, she's a Natlin character, so her ultimate gives Kinich one of those stacks. It provides more Night Soul points for Mavuika's ultimate, and it provides an attack bonus and damaged out and all that stuff with her other constellations, which are very efficient on Kinich since he's constantly looping around the enemy. So this team format, right? Replacements for this team could be Changling, Toma, or even the Pyro Traveler for Mavuika, right? Those three can, or other characters can also act as pyro applicators. And then replacements for the character that wants to use the Deepwood set, any other good Dendro applicator like Baishu or Nahida, and especially Emily, because she has really good sub DPS and she also works really well on burning teams. Most of the time is way better than Escoffier. Escoffier is really only here because Mavuika does an insane amount of melt damage and she can just quickly get out of the field and still provide Kinich with this other benefit. And then if you want a replacement for Ayansan, considering that she's an attack buffer, you can really only replace her with Bennett, maybe a Kujo Sara if you want, or maybe even Zhongli, so that you can get a little bit of shred, resistance shred for Kinich and even Mavuika. But you could really just, again, Ayansan here is really just a flex slot, so you could just put another sub DPS and you'd probably be losing a bit of damage, but it'd still be decent. So in conclusion, Kinich is a pretty restrictive character in the sense that his maximum damage output comes from pairing him with other Pyro characters and Natlin characters. You can't really pair him with any other character. Again, you can use Escoffier, but that's pretty conditional. You can use Kojo Sara, but even then, she's not really that viable in comparison to Ayansan, who is a Natlin character. And he's also pretty restrictive in the sense that, like I said, once you use his skill, he is locked onto that enemy. So if you switch out, you're going to be losing a lot of damage in your rotations. I mean, you're pretty much just going to be ruining the rotation. He's also a single target character that requires a pretty good amount of skill, at least relative to other characters, because he requires timing so that you can switch either to your left or to your right, depending on where the blind spot is going to show up at. But all around, he's still pretty good considering his damage. Will definitely stay in the top 10 DPS for a long time after this, considering that right now he's arguably in the top 5 DPS, right? Like you have characters like Mavuika, Skirk is gonna come out, Varisa's up there, and then you have Nuvillette and Arlecchino. But after that, really the only other character would be Mualani that is up there with him. And even then, even though she does do a lot of nuke damage, she's pretty unreliable. So you could make an argument that Kinich is around top 5 currently in the game. That might change when Skirk comes out, but as of right now, he's still top 5, top 6 even. He's still pretty good as a rerun. So if you want to summon on him, I wouldn't blame you. He's pretty cool. He helps a lot in exploration because his skill works like the grass Saurian, and where you can like grapple hook into the air. And even though he is rerunning a couple of weeks, a couple of months actually, before Notcry, again, his damage is still pretty good.